A lot of cities aren't really enforcing the law anymore. In places like Portland and San Francisco and Philadelphia, violent crimes are sometimes treated like traffic violations. Why is that? Well, last night on the show, we pointed out that billionaire ideologues like George Soros have spent millions of dollars on local district attorney races. Their goal is to replace prosecutors who prosecute with partisan operatives who prevent the enforcement of the law. Criminals commit crimes, police arrest them, Soros-backed DAs release them. That is not a conspiracy theory. We have watched it happen again and again. People die as a result. Our society degrades as a result. Things fall apart. Why does George Soros want that? We have no idea, and we're not going to speculate. But we can say with certainty that George Soros has done this to the rest of us. It is a matter of public record. Soros and his lawyers hate it when Americans point that out. They've intimidated many news organizations into silence on the subject. They don't think you have a right to notice what George Soros is doing to your country. We disagree with that, so we pointed it out. Immediately after we did, Soros's fellow billionaires came riding to his rescue. Twitter slapped a warning label on our video from last night's show. They claimed it contained, quote, sensitive content. For context, there are porn feeds on Twitter, huge porn feeds with graphic video and more than 1 million followers that have no such warnings from Twitter. So hardcore pornography is fine, let your kids watch, but criticizing George Soros is obscene. We asked Twitter about this. They claimed it was all a mistake. They always claim that. They're liars. Twitter didn't block rioters from sharing the location of Mitch McConnell's house. But stating obvious facts about George Soros, Twitter's algorithm said that was dangerous content. This is censorship, obviously. But more than that, it's a metaphor for what is happening to our country and to our politics. America's grotesquely distorted economy is making a tiny group of people richer than anyone has ever been in human history. Those people suddenly run everything, including our elections. They are subverting our political system far more brazenly and with much greater effect than that dastardly Vladimir Putin ever dreamed of doing. Our billionaire class is the real threat to democracy. That's obvious if you think about it, which is why you're told you're not allowed to think about it. Twitter won't let you. Democrats never even mention it. It wasn't so long ago that Joe Biden used to lecture us about getting money out of politics. Remember that? As recently as last year, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren hounded Michael Bloomberg on stage for trying to buy the Democratic nomination. In case you've forgotten, here it is.
The fundamental problem in this country is the power that the billionaire class has over the economic and political life of this country.
I don't think any billionaire ought to be able to do it, and I don't think people who suck up to billionaires in order to fund their campaigns ought to do it.
One person, one vote, not billionaires buying elections.
We've got billionaires who think they can just buy an election. Case in point, Michael Bloomberg.
Bernie Sanders may be an extremist, but he was right. Elizabeth Warren may be a fake Indian who doesn't know how to drink beer, but she was right too. Warren doesn't talk about that anymore. Michael Bloomberg has promised to spend more than $100 million to make Joe Biden president. One man spending $100 million in a single presidential election. But that's just the beginning of what Michael Bloomberg is doing. Bloomberg is also spending tens of millions of dollars to elect Democrats to the House of Representatives. And then today we learned that Bloomberg has raised $16 million to pay the court fines for 32,000 Hispanic and black Florida voters, and apparently choosing them by race, who have felony convictions. Why is he doing this? Well, a Bloomberg advisor just admitted it out loud. Quote, it tens of thousands of voters who are predisposed to vote for Joe Biden. Cynical? Scary? Yeah, it is. What does Elizabeth Warren have to say about that, about Bloomberg trying to buy this election? Well, nothing, of course. Apparently it's fine now. And what about our pampered revolutionary from suburban Westchester, Sandy Cortez? Cortez has told us she doesn't think billionaires should exist unless they're giving her power, in which case she slobbers all over them just like everyone else. Again, it didn't used to be this way. Democrats used to pretend that they cared about democracy. Once again, we refer you to last year's primary debates.
The mayor just recently had a fundraiser that was held in a wine cave full of crystals and served $900 a bottle wine. Billionaires in wine caves should not pick the next president of the United States.
This is the problem with issuing purity tests you cannot yourself pass. Senator, your net worth is 100 times mine. We need the support from everybody who is committed to helping us defeat Donald Trump.
I do not sell access to my time. I don't do call time with millionaires and billionaires.
I don't do call time with millionaires and billionaires. Oh, yeah, you do. In fact, that's now the entire Joe Biden for president campaign. Call time with millionaires and billionaires. The dozen people who gave the legal maximum to the Joe Biden Victory Fund, $620,000 check required, half of them came from Silicon Valley, and you'll recognize many of their names. Billionaires, in fact, like Facebook co-founder Dustin Moskowitz, Zynga founder Mark Pincus, Steve Jobs' widow, Laurene Powell Jobs. What's interesting is that all these people are, and we checked, white. They're also clearly highly privileged. And yet here's the funny thing. Somehow there aren't BLM protests outside of their homes accusing them of white privilege. Why is that? Because unlike blue-collar police officers or your third graders sitting through yet another lecture on white supremacy and privilege, these people are funding the Democratic Party, so they're immune from all that. See how that works? You get yelled at and humiliated, maybe fired. Your son can't get a job because he's the wrong color. But billionaires get a total pass. In fact, they're heroes. They're not privileged. They're heroes. Wall Street gets the same deal. Big finance is so overwhelmingly for Joe Biden that Biden's handlers demanded a minimum of $1 million before he'd even show up for a virtual event. But wait a minute, you may be asking. Haven't Democrats promised to police Wall Street? How can they police Wall Street if they're the choice of Wall Street? Well, pay no attention to the details, says Joe Biden. He's on your side.
I really do view this campaign as a campaign between Scranton and Park Avenue. And I really mean it.
Joe Biden really means it. In other words, he's lying. We checked the numbers. Joe Biden's campaign has raised more than $1 million from donors living on, that's right, Park Avenue. The Trump campaign, by contrast, has raised just $127,000 from the same area, about 1/10. In case you're wondering, by the way, Biden hasn't raised nearly as much from people in Scranton. Even the Washington Post had to ultimately admit what's going on. Quote, while Biden publicly calls out Wall Street excesses and promises to rein them in, Biden staffers privately are reassuring industry leaders that he won't focus on the issue in office, end quote. One investment banker reported the Biden campaign, quote, basically said, listen, this is just an exercise to keep the Elizabeth Warren people happy and don't read too much into it. Yeah, it's fine. We also shouldn't read too much into Joe Biden's pledge not to take funding from lobbyists or corporate PACs. Turns out fundraising data shows that's a lie, too. One of Biden's top advisors, a man called Steve Ricchetti, is in fact a longtime pharmaceutical lobbyist. So we know what's happening here. Joe Biden has said on camera what big money does to the political process. Watch this.
Lobbyists aren't bad people. Special interest groups are not bad people. But guess what? They're corrosive. People who accept the money from them aren't bad people, but it's human nature. You go out, Lynn, and bundle $250,000 for me, all legal, and then you call me after I'm elected and say, Joe, I'd like to come and talk to you about something. You didn't buy me, but it's human nature. You helped me. I'm going to say, sure, Lynn, come on in.
Oh, that's the old Joe Biden. And that's as close to an admission of political corruption as you will ever see on camera. Maybe Twitter will put a warning.